Karen, Laos, you beautiful, beautiful gift to this world. Girl, I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm feeling the love.
Oh, girl, here's to some hype woman vibes, man. It'll just
Yes,
pick you
yes,
right up when you are feeling like shit, man. It'll pick you right up, won't it?
absolutely. We need
So,
each other.
oh, preach, girl, preach. So, I want to share with our beautiful tribe the micro moment that you and I just had because I feel that it is so relatable to us all. So, y'all, I was telling our girl Karen, I've been traveling the past 3 weeks back to back. Beautiful, blessed, not bitching about it, but it can be exhausting. And last night I came home all in my head on stupid shit, all worked up. And on the kitchen counter was a beautiful package that was handwritten. So it caught my attention because you don't see that anymore. And in the book, and y'all, I'm holding up, if you're not watching us on YouTube, I'm holding up Karen's book, Trust Your Own Voice. And in it, not only did Karen gift me this beautiful book of hers, but she wrote this beautiful note inside it that says, and I want to read it to you because it moved me so much. Megan, what a treasure you are. Thank you for sharing your voice in the world. It's powerful. And always remember to trust it. Love, Karen. And I said to Karen, girl, you had no idea how bad I needed that.
Hmm.
And we were talking about these beautiful little micro moment decisions with these small little acts of kindness that aren't based on receiving something, just based on showing up with heart. And you had said to me, Karen, something I loved so much about what your friend said to you, like, girl, you're so lucky. And what did you say back to him, my girl?
I pay attention. That's exactly what I said. It's about seizing opportunities before you. And for me, I prioritize connection.
Mm,
It is the most important thing to me in my life
mm,
and always has been. I love people. When I was a little kid, my mom used to laugh because every day I would come home from school and say, either can I have somebody come over or can I go over to somebody else's house? I'm a constant extrovert. And so that is one of those things where I feel like it's so much about, well, I'll say another thing.
mm.
Somebody shared with me as a young girl to imagine that everybody you encounter has a sign above their head that says, make me feel important. And that has guided me along with my mom's commitment to others, always looking to others. And before inclusion was talked about as a thing, I remember my mom oftentimes, when I was a kid, we'd go to church and she'd have like this lunch, ladies' lunch or whatever. And I remember her walking in that room and I was just fixated on my name tag. Like, okay, I got to get my name tag down. And she would be looking, unbeknownst to me. And then after I did my name tag, I remember one time when she said, Karen, we're going to go sit at that table because I can see there's three women talking and one person is not being included in that conversation. So we're going to go sit over there and we're going to talk to her. So I feel like that has been a huge value for me my entire life of how can I be a space where people feel comfortable and safe to share.
I love that. As you're talking and sharing just the little micro moment decisions, um, it made me flash too. And I just did this the other week, and I'm curious what tools you do. I had another moment where I was spiraling, and the gremlins were knocking hard. Girl, Karen, I let them in. I let the whole party of gremlins in, and I was all tore up. And this thing happened where when I was scrolling social, which can amplify the anxiety, I took a beat and I started hyping for other women to say, you know what? I love what you're building. Keep doing it. And I did that, Karen, maybe for 5, 10 minutes. My mood changed entirely. Do you have any micro tools or anything that you use when you're head down in all of the things as you're building your tribe, as you're building this business and just all of life to create those human moments?
I do. There's two that come to mind immediately. Number one, to get more grounded in myself and remember who I am. And I'll share just a quick aside before I share that. What I'm going to share is a celebration portfolio. But before I share that, it was not that long ago when I was in the doldrums and my husband just looked at me. And he's a very gentle, soft spoken guy. So when he speaks, I really listen. He goes, Karen, remember who you are. And I haven't seen Black Panther, but he said, "Oh, it's from and I had this moment like, oh, like in my gut for like, you're right. Who am I? And I'm running my own race." And it was so powerful. And then he told me it was a quote from Black Panther. So for anybody, I don't know if you've seen it, Meg, or not, but it struck me at my core. And this is where I recommend a celebration portfolio. And the way that I define that is to have two lists or literally a portfolio. One list really of your accomplishments and the literal things that you have done in the world. But what I almost like better that is often overlooked by most of us is who you are. What are your character strengths? What are the qualities that you have as a person? And make a list of those too. And this is the same thing that I recommend when people are potentially going to ask for a raise or a promotion. Why do people like working with you? So often we fixate on the accomplishments and we forget about, I'm actually really likable. Here's why. Here's why people trust me quickly. Here's where my credibility comes through. Yes, it might be in the things that I do, but it's also in the way that I speak with people. I speak as if I know what I'm talking about. I speak with vocal authority and conviction. I'm not loosey-goosey and waffling in my tone of voice. So that's one thing that I found has been very helpful. And to celebrate the small wins. And if you're doing that as a regular, if we talk about these micro moments, if we celebrate a win, let's say we just got off a phone call with somebody, or we made somebody's day by making a compliment or whatever we did, to go, oh my gosh, that was awesome. I'm going to celebrate that. I'm amazing. And so often we're our own worst critic, as you know. So we're so hard on ourselves. So if we can start having these habits that are practiced, then we build on those. So over time, it gets easier to access that strength that we have inside. So that's the celebration portfolio. And I already forgot the other one. So
Girl,
we'll
you're
stick
taking it.
with that for
I'm in a
now.
maze with you right now. I'm like, yep, keep preaching, girl. I got to tell you, as Karen, I love this so much, this remembering who you are, because I had this whole flash to as you were sharing that and as you were sharing about when we ask for a promotion, we look at these accomplishments, but what we lose sight of is who you are as a human and how you show up in the rooms you're in. And so
Totally.
last week, I had this moment where I realized that I was not showing up as my best self because I was trying to do all the things. You ever have one of those moments where
Yes.
every email pisses you off, like everything, and you're like, leave me alone. And I had this, I was like, oh girl, like you are not showing up your best self today. And so I took a beat for the rest of the day to walk away.
Mm,
And I found that when I came back the next day, I responded in a way that was more in line with me.
beautiful example.
Yeah. I I want to ask you, God, so many things I want to ask you, but I want to go to our first call together, which I got to share with the crowd. We came into each other's orbits. Do you remember how we came into each other's world?
I'm not sure. I thought it was LinkedIn, but I'm thinking, but what about, yeah, I don't know who connected us on LinkedIn or how we found each other.
We started the way I remember it. Isn't it funny how you can make up stuff that might not necessarily be true, but it feels right? This is how it feels in my mind that we were, your posts and your content started showing up in my feed. And I was like, oh my God, I love what Karen is building about helping women find their voices and showing up with such authenticity, which was felt through the screen, still is. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh my God, I want to get to know this person. And so we just started hyping for each other, commenting on each other's posts, helping amplify each other. And then we were like, oh my God, we got to get on a call. And on that first call, you had said something that I was like, girl, not only are you coming on the podcast, but we are going to create something together because I love how you are on a mission to eradicate self doubt and to help women confidently communicate.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. And
You
girl,
are
you
so
you
right.
you shared a story on that first call on why this is such a passion point for you. Do you mind sharing that with our crowd, with our
I'd
crew?
be happy to. Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is to say the punchline is I was tongue-tied in a boardroom. So that's not really the punchline, but that's what happened. I'm assuming this is the story you're talking
Hmm.
about.
Yeah.
Even though I had been speaking on all kinds of stages all over the world on the executive team at my company, and yet I was tongue-tied when I was in front of my peers, particularly my boss. It was so bad that my boss had to shut down the meeting in the most loving and gentle way. She pulled me aside. She said, Karen, once again, you didn't trust yourself. You didn't trust your gut. You could have just tabled the meeting and said, hey, I don't remember why we were meeting about this in the first place. Let's move things on. And I had that moment of, well, number one, I was mortified when she shut it down. And then this idea that I could have done that. I could have just said, let's table a meeting. And then the third, and that's really what set me out on the course to figure out what the root of this challenge was for me of why was I needing permission? What is going on here? And I was not young. I was in my 40s. And it was one of those things where I thought, I got to figure this out. And it turns out that I had an internal conflict with my boss about what she had asked me to present. She doesn't even remember exactly what, like it was not a big deal to her. But I was taught as a kid, you don't question your boss. And I was raised with a very traditional home where my dad called the shots and my mom did what he said. Now, that's what I grew up with. Interestingly enough, I've had success in my career from a confidence perspective because my dad also, though, the good part about my dad is that he taught me to speak up, especially to ask for what I want. This is the same dad that taught me when I was 6 years old, going around with him to flea markets, who gave me a few dollars and he said, go have fun, but never pay full price.
Mm.
And he always used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You don't have if you don't ask. And so growing up with that conflict was interesting because what I walked away with was when I am adding value, meaning when I am producing something. So there's also a very different definition of how you would say adding value. Certainly, I look at it differently now. But I think traditionally, most of us go, oh, I accomplish things and that's my value. And what I then having that, and then my mom's modeling in my head, like she never told me you don't have a voice, but there was clear modeling in the household
Mhm.
that you don't have a voice. You need to ask for permission, and usually from a man. Interestingly enough, my mom was a powerhouse in the community. She was in charge of lots of things. She was president of this and that organization. So it was okay to be in charge as long as it wasn't in the home. So I grew up with that mentality, but I still had what I continue to see in women all the time is this need to accommodate everybody or, oh, I don't want to bother you. I better make sure I please everybody so they're happy at the expense of ourselves, killing ourselves, frankly. And that is a big part of my story. And so as a result, I wanted to not only figure out what the root of my problem was, but then when I realized I was in a prison of my own making, like we all have agency. So once I got out of that prison, I realized I want to help every woman be free.
Mm.
So, because of my expertise in communication strategies, that to me is the replacement of, okay, how can people feel more confident? How can they get rid of that doubt? And when I say eradicate, I also want to be clear. I am a realist. Like, I understand that we are always going to be dealing with some level of doubt at certain times. But my definition of this mission is that women will no longer be silenced or paralyzed to the point from doubt to the point where they don't speak up.
Mm, girl, we gotta get prison of my own making on a freaking t-shirt, bumper sticker, hat. Shit, girl, that sums up about my 40 years of existence on this earth. Prison. Yes. I love I love so much your awareness and
Mm,
taking your lessons and wanting to share them with other women because I got to tell you, girl, as you're talking, it makes me flash to I was never taught to talk about this stuff. I was
mm.
listening to Elizabeth Gilbert yesterday and she was saying
Oh,
oh my God, right, right.
love her.
Oh, she was on the podcast. She was on a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and you'll all link it in the show notes so you can click on it. And she was talking about how in her life, she said, have you ever seen a relaxed woman? And I was like, no. And she was like, but have you seen an overwhelmed, stressed out, over accommodating, I'll figure it out, head down in the thing woman? Yeah, that's all I grew up seeing.
Hmm.
I was like, shit. So I want to ask you, Karen, because I love so much how you're helping us navigate through getting unlocking this key of this own prison that we've been taught to place ourselves in and hearing ourselves and putting the ask out there. And I think at least in my own journey, one of the hardest things was finding out what I wanted.
Mm.
How do you, what's your recommendation to me, the women listening that are like that? Yeah, I don't, how do I get clear on what I want? Not what I've been taught to want, not where I'm getting the validation, not what I think I want, but but me,
Yeah. And I have to start with a story. I promise I will answer that question.
please.
But I'm writing my next book and doing informal research, talking to people, and have been this year just to get more clear on what people are looking for. And I remember vividly being at a conference in April of this year at the Better Up conference, and there were thousands of people there. I'm remembering probably 10 meaningful conversations that I had approximately where I would go up to women, we'd talk, and then I would ask, how can I support you?
Mm,
What do you want? And most of them could not answer that question. They were pleasantly surprised. It was, oh, wow. Oh my gosh. That, like, most of them had some level of gasp, like, I never like been asked that before.
mm,
And I remember thinking, wow, I've been ready to write a book on the strategies specifically of here's how to ask. And I have been realizing that most of us don't truly know what we want.
mm,
And that's the book that people need. So I've done a bit of a reframe on that. And one of the things that I think, first of all, I want to acknowledge exactly what you said, that most of us are so culturally conditioned to look at everybody else that we don't even think about, oh, I don't even like what? I don't even know. Like, I didn't even know that I had choice until I mean, not that long. I was going to say not that it's been a while, but I can remember I was a full-fledged adult when I had this epiphany of, oh, I get to choose. And that was related to my husband. But I thought, well, I don't know what he wants yet. So I'll
mm,
wait to see. I'm getting a bit off on a tangent here. But what I want to share as far as a place to start, number one, it's physiological. And I would literally take your hand and put it on your heart. And it has to start with slowing down. It has to, even if you take 30 seconds. And that's the micro moments or that we're looking for, these moments where we can go, okay, for 30 seconds, I am going to stop moving and put my hand on my heart and just start there. Just start with your physicality of the hand connected to the heart. My chiropractor has a great exercise for, it's very simple for regulating your nervous system. And it's really just taking your hand on your heart and your other hand on your stomach, and you start rubbing them around in a circle. And it just to help ground you in your core. So that's one technique because there's so much somatically that we, I think, just have not even tapped the surface of. There's so many ways that we can self-regulate. And because, like you said, we're all just going crazy. I mean, you're not saying these words, but like spinning out with all these different things. And one of the best exercises that I have found to get clear on what you want is to remember, going back to what my husband said, remember who you are. And what that looks like as an exercise is to take various time frames in your life. Start chronologically. What did you love doing when you were a little kid, like 5 years old, or the earliest memory of joy? And then think, okay, 5 years later, what did I love then? And take some time to reflect on the different, depending upon your age, the different decades, or it might be every 5 years, and start noticing, where did you feel the most joy and where did you feel the truest version of yourself? And that is a place to start, because when we can see the thread or the theme over time, like for me, I've always loved relationships. Like I said, that was one of my first memories of coming home every day for school and going, where can I go today? Or who can come over? And then realizing it gives me joy to socialize. And so how can I then? And then of course for me, it was how can I make a living out of this? And that was a much longer progression. But I also think it's important for women to be really full of grace for themselves, for ourselves, because this is not going to happen overnight. And we're fooling ourselves if we think it's just like, oh, I'm going to know what I want tomorrow, when for 30 or 40 years you have neglected unintentionally or intentionally your own needs. So starting with that and remembering the reality and having grace. So that's one suggestion that I have.
I love that. Girl, you are taking me to church right now. As you are talking, God, it's so true. We want, especially in this world, I love to call it, listen, I love me, Jeff Bezos. What that man has built,
Oh
and
my gosh.
right? And the fact that I don't even need to leave the damn house. I can be in my bathrobe and I can get that there by in 48 hours. But I feel, Karen, that it has created this mindset that we have, especially for us achievers that have always hit the mark in what we wanted, that we should be able, once we figure it out, boom, I should get it and here it should be. And then you get frustrated or you quit when it's not delivered in the package and the wrapping paper that you want. And listen, I'm guilty as charged of this. What's your recommendation? Or what do you do to keep going even when you feel like you're not getting the outcome that you want in the moment, instead of throwing the towel in and being like, fuck it, I'm done?
There's a few things, and I have a story that I would really love to share.
Please.
The first thing that I would say is I'm laughing because I am so relating to what you're talking about. There have been so many times that I've wanted to quit. And yet, going back to Simon Sinek's Start with Why, my purpose of eradicating self-doubt in 10 million women is what gets me up every day, and remembering the impact that I'm making. And this can also be hard for those people on listening to this when you're trying to build a business, or you are building a business. I shouldn't say trying, you are building a business. And you've got all this amazing impact, amazing compliments, and yet the money doesn't always follow that. So it's tough sometimes to go, well, impact doesn't pay my bills.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And so there's a reality with that. So I'm a very non-fluff person. I don't want anybody listening to this think that I'm saying, oh, if you just say this, like, oh, it'll be amazing. There's a very strong reality around that. And yet I do very much believe in the power to keep going because of whatever the why that you have that drives you. To me, that is what helps me on days that I want to give up. And thankfully, I don't have too many of those days anymore, but there's definitely days where I feel like, gosh, what do I do next? Or
Mm,
I don't feel like I'm getting exactly what I wanted to, or yeah, like you said, it's in a different package. And so the story I want to share is my TEDx experience.
yeah.
I applied, so I'm originally from Minneapolis, live in the Bay Area now, but I applied to be a speaker. And I remember opening on my computer, opening the page to apply. And I got all these emotions. I could just feel like, oh my gosh, this is the one. And I got a call back. And that was the first time I had gotten a call back. Interviewed with the woman, such a great connection. Turns out she grew up 4 blocks from me. She delivered my mom's paper as a
Oh
little
my
girl.
God.
We had this incredible connection. And she said, okay, my job, there were 100 applicants. You were one of 17. Now my job is to rally for you at the committee next week where we get it down to the final 6. I'm crossing my fingers. Like it just sounded so good, right? Well, the following Sunday, a few days later, I got the dreaded email saying I didn't get it. And here's my next piece of advice for people is to grieve your losses.
Mm,
Don't just bulldoze over them
mm,
because they're going to show up somewhere in your body, somewhere, somehow, and something that you say. And grief can take many forms. It does not have to be crying on the kitchen floor. This can simply be, oh my gosh, that really sucks. That really hurt. I really wanted this. And grief is accelerated when you talk about it with someone else. But at least sharing it with yourself, starting there, acknowledging that loss. And then I did spend a good day grieving. I was really upset by this one because I thought it was so aligned
yeah.
with me. And then that night I said, okay, now what are you going to do about it?
Mm,
We had such a great connection, that gal and I was going to be in Minneapolis that week. So I reached out to her and I said, Megan, I said her name was Megan as well. I said, Megan, this must have been the hardest email to write. It must be so hard to write and tell someone that they weren't accepted. I totally get it. And we had such a great connection. I would love to have coffee with you because I'm actually going to be in town this week. Would you be open to that? Well, that's when we chatted, had a great, she said yes. We went to Perkins, had coffee there. And she just said, I think you'd be a really good fit for our speaker coaches, but I can't make that decision. I've got to hand you out, so and so, the head speaker coach. Anyway, one thing led to another. It took months. I had to do a number of things, jump through hoops. And then I became a speaker coach for TEDx Minneapolis. Now that was amazing enough, but I have to tell you the cherry on top, and this is where you never know where God is leading you. And you
mm,
never know, even though a no might be a no at the time, it doesn't mean that it can't turn into something else.
mm.
And do you know that I was nominated by the team to be the MC of the event? So it was like hosting the Oscars. As you know, it's TEDx. I mean, it's at 4 to 5 hours long. It was me and another gal. She and I had a great time emceeing together. And I feel like that was so much better aligned for me than
Mm.
even being a speaker.
As you're talking, Karen, it just made me flash to this. And I'm guilty of this in this world that can have us feeling like we need to optimize every second, and that
Mm,
it's not about the speed of response, it's about the quality of communication. And I love that you got something that girl hit you hard. And instead of trying to respond right there, get it done, thank you, goodbye, you allowed yourself to sit in it. You allowed yourself to think. And in 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours, whatever that time frame looked like, you responded back in a way that was in line with you. And that also came from a space of empathy. Boy, that must have been really hard for you. And look where it led. That just made
thank you.
me think about the power in these little like we keep going back to these micro decisions that we make. And one of the things that keeps coming up for me, and you had said this so beautifully, And I know it's one of your main prongs of your mission in eradicating this self doubt and allowing us to trust and hear our voices was the power of the ask.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how quickly do we not even speak the words we're thinking because we think, nah, that won't work, that won't happen, and the opportunities we talk ourselves out of? When I say the power of the ask, what does that mean? Talk to me, girl, about that and your take on it and the tools laid on us, girl.
I gotta share what is coming up for me because when I was a corporate trainer, I was training in oh my gosh, in Kuala Lumpur. And it was mostly men. And I walked in, I was meeting everybody. I was the quintessential American, like, happy go, like, hey, hey. And one guy, very reserved guy, I just went up to him, hi, my name is Karen. "What? You're from Thailand? I have a layover there next week. You want to show me around?" This was me completely unfiltered. You should have seen his face of like awkward, what do I say to this? And then I felt really dumb at that moment, frankly, and I just said, "Oh, I'm just kidding, just kidding. But I am gonna be in Thailand. It's so great to meet you." And then we had the day together. At the end of the day, he hands me his card. He goes, "I want to show you around in Thailand. I know you've got 24 hours. I'm going to have my driver pick you up. I want you to give me your flight information, and then I'm going to take you around for the day." I kid you not. Like, this was one of those examples. And so I'm laughing because I'm chuckling when I remember his staff showing me around. And one of the, I mean, it was literally like this dream thing. They picked me up. It kind of sounds freaky. Like they picked me up in a big white van. But
Foreign
I
country,
remember,
you're safe, girl. You're safe.
so we did a number of things and they said, Mr. Peaches has a lot of money. What do you want to do? It was so hilarious. They were so cute, these two young women. Anyway, and they then at one point they said, "Do you want to ride have you ever ridden an elephant?" We go ride an elephant. I mean, it was just a day full of these glorious delights. And so I bring this up because I do think that there was a power in that moment for me when I met him of just being me.
Mm,
And it wasn't something I planned. It was, "Oh, do you want to show me around?" It truly was kind of a ha ha. I wasn't thinking like, "Oh, what can I get from this person? Oh, I want to like opportunistic here." It was more
yes.
just playful. And that is something that in this example was more just the reminder of being yourself and you
Mm,
you never know what's going to come.
mm,
Now, when I talk about the power ask, I am generally thinking more about how you can be strategic about what you want and being able to have the courage to ask for it and to ask for it with clarity. Too often we do these passive asks. I always tell people if you start with the word if, it's probably not a direct ask. Like, "Well, Megan, if you're interested in blah, blah, blah," versus, "Megan, would you like to?"
mm.
But it's scarier to ask a direct question because we're forcing a choice. We're
Yeah.
forcing a choice for them to say yes or no. But most of us, especially when I train salespeople, I see this all the time. SAP happens all the time. Like, "Well, if you're interested, let me know. If you'd like to have another conversation, you know where to find me." Versus, "Hey, would you like to set up a call right now?" I'm thinking about a time I spoke at a conference a couple months ago and a woman came running after me. She was so funny on the escalator. She goes, "I heard you were the one in the pink blazer. Yeah, I want to work with you." I said, "Okay, great." And instead of saying, "Oh, that's wonderful, let's set up a time at some point," I just said, "Do you have your phone now? Do you have time now? We can set up a time. Let's meet next week. Let's align our calendars." And these moments where we feel almost like we either, I don't know, don't have permission or we
Mm,
don't have confidence or something to put something off that we actually know we want. And I think
mm,
goes back to your initial question about getting in tune with what we want. I
mm.
think like one of my coaches, one of my very first coaches asked what I find one of the most powerful questions, which is, "What would you want if you weren't afraid to want it?"
Mm.
And for some of us, it's fear. For some of it's just what would you want if you didn't have to consider anybody else? Because so often we are filtering our wants through the lenses of others. What will my family think? What will my kids think? What will my coworkers think? What will my boss think? All these things. I mean, I'm thinking back to a time when my 50th birthday, I decided I'm going to spend the month living in Manhattan. I've always had a dream to live there. Why don't I just go? And I remember at the time I was working for a company, I had already talked to my bosses. They were fine with it. We had an office there. And I wrote this email to my team. And most of the company reported to me because most of them, the people were on the delivery team for speaking. And so I say that because it was a majority that, of course, it was very exciting. Everybody was like, oh, that's great. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, yeah, I'm doing this. Like I was so aligned with my choice. Well, then I found out that some people were worried that there was a problem in my marriage and people were talking.
Mm.
There was no problem in my marriage. I was so surprised by that. And to me, this is a great example of when you are so aligned with the choice that you want to make for you, you're not thinking about all the people that are going to think this or that or whatever. And that was that moment where I kind of woke up to reality of, wow, like an uncomfortable reality of, wow, people are actually saying that. That's so awful. And then I felt compelled to write an email to say, hey, just wanted everybody to know my marriage is just fine. But I felt like I needed to say something to set the record straight. And I don't know, looking back, if that was the right choice or not, because on one hand, you could say, who cares what people think? But because it was the majority of the company, I just felt like I needed to say, this has nothing to do with me and Chris. This has everything to do with me pursuing a dream of something that I want. And a 50th birthday is an incredible way to celebrate that.
You know,
So I think, yeah, it's
I
important to
loved
know.
what when you said, Karen, about I was so aligned with the decision. That has been, girl, my mantra, my home base this year has been, listen, if the decision feels right to you and you've sat on it and it feels right to you, then that's the only guiding light you need. And it's not about how others perceive it or even if they accept it. It's about this showing up for you.
Yeah.
I love that. Girl, I could have you on here for 24 hours talking about these church service moments. Y'all get Karen's book. We are linking it in the show notes. And Karen, I want you to tell the beautiful women in our tribe about your offerings out into the world because you do this really cool mastermind program. You have all of these amazing offerings. Can you tell us how we can get more of you, how we can work with you, how we can get your beautiful nuggets?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find all the things at KarenLaos.com, and my last name is Laos. And the main thing that I offer is called the Powerhouse. It is for women who want to speak with authority, whether they want to get a raise, get a promotion, start a business, but it's really all about eradicating that doubt and having the communication tools to do it. And it's called the Powerhouse. You're welcome to reach out to me for that. And I also have a few free resources as well. I too have a podcast called Ignite Your Confidence. So, of course, that is free and available to all. And I host a free connection call every month, typically the last Friday of the month. And that is for women to simply connect and converse. And we often talk about what gets in the way of asking for what we want. So it's a super supportive call with sharing of resources and the like. And then the last thing I'll say as another free resource that you can grab right away is called 9 Words to Avoid and What to Say Instead. And that is on my website as a download for you.
Awesome. Girl, I am so grateful to be in your orbit. Every
Likewise.
time we talk, you have this beautiful way of giving me another lens to look
Mm.
at the world and how I'm showing up. And girl, keep building because it's beautiful and it's powerful, just like you. I love you, girl.
Thank you. I love you right back. Love you right back. Mwah.